Emotions such as suspense, curiosity, and surprise help readers focus attention on a story, contributing to a reader's sense of satisfaction. These emotions, according to structural affect theory, can be aroused by manipulation of temporal elements in a narrative structure. Empirical studies have shown that temporal manipulation of discourse structure can produce different cognitive and emotional response by influencing the reader's inferences and anticipations. We read books or watch films not just to acquire information, but also to receive some kind of reward or to stimulate interest through reading or watching. The audience emotions arise in response to reading or watching can be classified into two types: external and internal. External emotions are evoked as the reader confronts the pattern, i.e., schema or structure, of the narrative. Internal emotions are aroused as the audience enters the story world described in the text or the film. Cognitive responses, such as curiosity or surprise, epitomize external emotions that occur from narrative structure. Empathy with characters in a story is an example of internal emotions. Flashbacks and foreshadowing are tools that writers use to add dimensions to their writings. Flashbacks give us the ability to see into a character's past in real time, whereas foreshadowing drops hints of what may happen in the future. A lot of time one could tell by the environment that a storm was coming or rain will fall. Signs in the weather signaling events to come are similar to foreshadowing events in a story. Foreshadowing is an author's use of hints or clues to suggest events that will occur later in the story. Not all foreshadowing is obvious. Frequently, future events are merely hinted at through dialogue, description, or the attitudes and reactions of the characters. Foreshadowing frequently serves two purposes. It builds suspense, and it is also a means of making a narrative more believable by partially preparing the reader for events which are to follow. When we are watching a film or reading a book and suddenly we have a shift in time, like when we see an adult character as a child or a crime committed at an earlier time, that is called a flashback. Flashback is a device that allows the writer to present events that happened before the time of the current events. Flashback techniques include memories, dreams, stories of the past told by characters. If you want to find a flashback in a story, you must look for a place when the writer breaks up the chronological order of the plot to tell about something that took place earlier. An example in literature of flashback occurs in Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, when the ghost of the Christmas past takes Scrooge into his past to see scenes from his youth. The distinction between foreshadowing and flash forward, however, may not be clear in books or film narratives in which flash forward can be partially explicit with help of the camera. For example, a shot in which a character's face is hidden by manipulation of the camera angle. Both flashback and foreshadowing are narrative devices that present story events out of temporal order. Flashback describes some past events related to the present, while foreshadowing gives allusion, possibly implicit, to some future events. Typically, in film media, flashback often functions to provide backstory in support of a main storyline, being presented either as a continuous sequence or as a series of scenes showing only the crux of the backstory. By contrast, foreshadowing, as hints of what is to come, gives only implicit or partial information. If foreshadowing is completely implicit, the audience realizes its meaning only later. In retrospect, if it is explicit with partial information, the reader is forced to fill in the information gap in her mental representation of the story. This kind of foreshadowing often serves to focus the reader's attention on a specific event. Foreshadowing implicitly alludes to a future event in a manner that makes it difficult for the audience to recognize its meaning until the event actually happens. In contrast, flash forward explicitly presents a future event in a manner that makes a reader immediately aware of the impending activity.